We really have a great friendship, a great relationship. I would really have to say
a lot's changed since Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman last visited the White House.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, the relation between Saudi Arabia and the rest of America, it's an old relation. We are the oldest ally for the rest of America and the Middle East.
Right.
Back in 2018, the Saudi leader was selling Americans his bold vision for a modern Saudi Arabia. Since then, the U.S.-Saudi relationship has been at times strained, even tested. Still, the kingdom has transformed in a large part through U.S. investment. Last May, as he did in his first term, Trump chose Saudi Arabia for his first foreign trip. He returned claiming $600 billion in Saudi investment for U.S. energy, tech, and defense.
In addition to purchases of $142 billion of American-made military equipment by our great Saudi partners, the largest ever. This week there are multi-billion-dollar commercial deals with Amazon, Oracle, AMD. They're all here.
The Crown Prince hopes to deepen those commercial and defense ties with his return to Washington by finalizing a U.S.-Saudi defense pact, including the sale of U.S. F-35 fighter jets. He also aims to further investment in Saudi artificial intelligence, civilian nuclear power, and infrastructure.
Saudi Arabia is much more a player in the region, working with Arab regional allies and global Islamic allies to create a friendly atmosphere for Washington.
The leaders are also expected to discuss regional stability, like countering Iranian influence. Trump will try to convince the Crown Prince to join the Abraham Accords and normalize ties with Israel. But that's unlikely, given Saudi Arabia's insistence on the realization of a Palestinian state.
It is just not possible to make progress now in the context of the Gaza war, with the war ongoing, with the consensus in Israel opposing any recognition of any form of Palestinian statehood.
That makes Donald Trump's visit with Mohammed bin Salman challenging. Behind the ambitions of both leaders, there's a shared goal of avoiding public disagreement while reaffirming the Saudi-U.S. partnership amidst a turbulent geopolitical landscape. Kimberly, Halkett, Al Jazeera, the White House.
Well, for more on this, we're joined now from Riyadh by Abdulaziz al-Ghashian. He is a lecturer of international relations at Naif Arab University. Thanks so much for being with us here on Al Jazeera. As we heard there in the story, obviously a lot on the agenda for Mohammed bin Salman. Security and defence, F-35s, AI investment in Saudi Arabia, nuclear power. What do you think is going to be top of the agenda? How much do you think that the Crown Prince is actually going to be able to get across the line this week?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me, Tom. It's good to join you. I really appreciate that last part of your question, is getting things over the line. I think that is really the main intention and the main objective, I think, of this of the Crown Prince's visit, is to carry on the momentum that happened with Donald Trump's visit in May and really carry things and carry things over the line for lots of other aspects. In my opinion, I think probably the most tangible aspects maybe in the sphere of the business and tech nexus, in my opinion. I think for me, this is the thing that probably interests the MBS the most. And this is the thing that I think is most tangible. And therefore, I think that they're all focused on that mostly. The other aspects of security and defense is something of a work in progress, but not detached from a super frame of economy and business. So I think there are lots of details that need to be ironed out. But in my opinion, I think it's business, it's tech, and then there are these bridging of the gaps when it comes to the aspects of security and defense.
We also heard in that story that US investment has transformed Saudi Arabia. Do you agree with that statement? And if so, in what way?
Well, I think it's still in the process. I think what it did transform is the image that Saudi Arabia is open for business. And most importantly, I think it transformed the notion that here was a closed Saudi that is now open that is open not only for international business, but for tourism and everything else. I think it's open, for just open and becoming more globalized. And I think this is really, really prominent and a strong pillar of Saudi Arabia's really diversification aspects of its economy, et cetera, and moving forward. It has to seem open, and it has to project its openness. And I think one way, or one of the biggest ways of projecting its openness, is if the United States business community claim it is. So that's why it's very strategic for Saudi Arabia to really develop relations with the American business community and the investment community there.
Okay. Well, what about nuclear cooperation here? Obviously, Saudi Arabia has been looking for a deal that would enable it to enrich uranium for economic purposes. Is that on the cards this week?
Yeah, I think that's on the cards, and that's something that's incredibly important and incredibly strategic. In my opinion, I think it's incredibly important and strategic, but probably the most sensitive and one of the most complex. The notion of or the requirements of nuclear cooperation is something that's quite elusive because Saudi Arabia are asking for American support with less conditions. And the reason why it wants to have less conditions is because it wants to enrich uranium. And it wants to not only enrich but to sell uranium. So I think one of the reasons why it is, excuse my cat here, but one of the reasons why it's going to be a strategic visit for Saudi Arabia is to really bridge that gap that they have on this understanding. In my estimation, I don't think they will reach the agreement that the Saudis would want yet. But they will probably reach something of an agreement that they could consolidate this agreement, and then they could probably use it later on and develop it later on. And this is what I think is one of the themes of this visit. In my opinion, I think one of the main themes of this visit is to have it as a facilitatory aspect for other things in the future, other strategic things in the future, and not necessarily as a culmination of Saudi-American relations. So I think the fact that they're trying to get an alliance and not necessarily a treaty, if they get an alliance that they want, a defense alliance, then this is very important because it will consolidate a lot of the understandings that they had with the previous administrations. Yes. And then that will then enable it later on to perhaps be elevated into a treaty in the future.
It could be a step towards something further. Yes. And just finally, the Abraham Accords. I mean, is there any chance that Israel is going to agree to normalizing ties with Israel?
I wish I had a dollar or a pound for every time I heard that. No, the conditions are just simply not there. Let me sum it up in this way. There needs to be a lot of stars that need to be aligned. Some of these stars are not even in the same galaxy at the moment. The domestic public opinion in Saudi Arabia is not amenable to normalization talks with Israel whatsoever. And Israel now is perceived as to be the new security threat in the region. Secondly, I think it was Hussein Ibish that spoke before, and he's spot on, when it was just very difficult for any government now to even hint at a Palestinian aspect. So the whole notion that the Saudis are calling for a Palestinian state and a Palestinian component, a strong Palestinian component, is not even in the cards. It's not even there. The other aspect that is very, very important, which is the political landscape in the United States. The political landscape in the United States required for 67 votes to get in the Senate for what the Saudis want as a treaty. That's not even happening. And so the whole notion of normalization and joining the Abraham Accords is nothing but a desperate attempt by people in the Netanyahu regime to try to seem like they have some sort of say in what is happening in American and Saudi bilateral relations. And it's something that they're trying to do in order to be in the picture, to be linked to some sort of mega deal. And the reality is they are not. This is a This is an American first approach meeting a Saudi first approach. And normalization with Israel is nowhere, it's just very difficult to see. I don't see that. And I don't see that joining the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
And also, let me just say this. I think, unfortunately, the Abraham Accords, has been tainted. I mean, it has been viewed in a very negative light. And so if Saudi Arabia will normalize relations in the future, it won't be part of the Abraham Accords. It will be part of its own accords.
Yes. Thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but great to talk to you and get your thoughts. That is Abdulaziz al-Ghashian for us out of Riyadh today.
My pleasure.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.